Hello and welcome to Take a Beat. My name is Tirza and I am the digital pastor here at IES. And Take a Beat is a podcast where we invite you to talk about things that matter and just take a little break only to launch ourselves back on the beat. So I am alone today because Titus ditched me. um, so we're still in our tech series and talking about having healthy relationships with technology. And I actually want to talk today about relationships because today, since we have an IRL realm that we live in, but we also have this kind of virtual online realm that we operate in, we actually meet a lot of people and we build relationships online. And so, like, I'm kind of wondering, I kind of just wanted to take a little time and chat about what does it mean to build authentic relationships online? Because there are people who you haven't met in a while, but you keep in contact through online and social media. But there's also people that you completely meet online. And let's be honest, the thought scares me. I think when I was younger, this was also, I mean, you know, the internet and all of that was pretty new. It wasn't like new. It was relatively new, and we had chat rooms and different things. And I remember I met someone and started not like not like a weird but just like a friendship online. And I'm trying to remember, but I think the guy was in like Australia or something. And this one time, my parents and I went to Australia, and he's like, "Oh, let's meet up," and I was so freaked out. Um, yeah, I don't even remember how I remember this because it was a long time ago. But there's always this thing, and we don't know who we meet and whether the people we meet online are genuinely who they say they are. Right? There's all of these, catfishing, and people who kind of say they're one person when they're not. And this is probably why online dating freaks me out. Just saying. I know a lot of people who have, met their spouse online, but I'm just like, just the thought of it is making me hyperventilate. Sorry. That's a lot. That's a lot of information about me. But I wanted to talk about building relations. Actually, I have met people and befriended people through online like venues. I think when we were in a pandemic, I joined this like co-working app space. And so I got to know people. I actually ended up making friends all over the world, like in Israel, in New York, in like France, in the UK, in India. There's just lots of people. Um, and I don't know, like, but I could make friends with them. I think that's one of the beauty of online and technology is we are able to reach people that we aren't able to before. Um, and even in relationships, like friendships, for example, um, I just texted one of my college friends, um, and we we haven't really lived in the same country since 2013, but we call all the time and we FaceTime and um, Zoom, all of these all of these different platforms. And so um, relationships are made more possible, I think, online as well. But I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how do we conduct ourselves online? How do we build genuine relationships? One of the things that came to my kind of radar um, was this whole idea of actually our church is going through the Time to Dream um, discussions, and one of them is talking about the five building blocks of genuine fellowship. And let me just kind of uh, list them. Wow, I need more coffee. Sorry. Authenticity, courtesy, mutuality, hospitality, and unity. And I'm like, I was sitting there in one of my small groups and we were going through these five building blocks. And I'm thinking, maybe because of my role as the digital pastor, I'm thinking about how do we build these kind of relationships online, because I do have like I do get to connect with people who come to our services online. I've never met them. There's one person who is in Japan, and we met because someone else had introduced her to IES, and uh, I've never met her. But she attends IES service and was part of some of our online groups. We also have people in Indonesia, for example, in Bali. Hi, Bu Natasha. um, and actually, like a shout out to some of my um, life group members, like Yosaya, who's in Samarang, and he would come to all of these life groups, and I think I've met him once in person, but the rest of the interaction has been online, and also it our online survey. I'm just like like giving shout outs here and there, but there's Spot Roy, which I actually like. He comes to our online services, and the first time I met him was when he was in Jakarta not too long ago, maybe last year, and had gotten baptized. And it was so good to be there and seeing him get baptized. And I'm like, wow, like I met this person online. I've never met him beforehand. It was funny when he came to Jakarta and he was saying hi to me because he knew what I looked like and I didn't know what he looked like. And so he had to introduce himself to me. But I was thinking about these five building blocks and how we can look at it um, in our online interactions. I think one of the things that come to mind is how can we be authentic in our online interactions, even with friends who are our acquaintances, people that we connect with on social media. Um, how can we be authentic? Yet at the same time, also there's that safety thing, right, on the internet. um, what constitutes an authentic relationship? In Romans 12 verse 9, it says, "Let love be without hypocrisy." Um, and Pastor Rick Warren talked about how hypocrisy was that word derived from a theater term where an actor put on masks to portray different characters. And so I think that got me thinking a little bit, and I wanted to ask you what kind of masks do we put in our online persona? Um, or when we when we I don't know, and these are questions that I'm still thinking about too. How can we be authentic yet at the same time safe online and build relationships? Is it possible to be authentic and to love without hypocrisy online? I'm thinking about even times when during the pandemic I would go to an online church, but not just an online church. I went to a VR church. And so everyone there was there like under their like handles and their avatars. And so in my head I was like, if I meet them in real life, I wouldn't know what they look like. But then thinking about that, like how much of that interaction was authentic and genuine, like how, yeah, so how much can you share online or in that setting? Actually, that is something I want to talk to PD about, like about virtual church or VR church and and genuine connections. I think one of the things too is courtesy, one of the building blocks, and it talks about in Romans 12, be devoted to one another in love. One of the things that I observed during the pandemic was the increase of online or cyberbullying. And the I had several discussions with some friends, especially because a lot of us work with teenagers at the time. And the biggest thing that we talked about was online, behind a screen, people feel safe and people feel like they're not seen or not invisible. They are invisible, um, or they feel some kind of distance because of the screen, maybe, or however it is, and so they feel like their words or what they say or what they do doesn't really have a real life impact. So, for example, if if someone's here in front of me, and of course, like I won't do this, but if I just say bad things about them, I see the impact of my words in real time, like on their faces, how the words hit them, how it yeah, how it impacts them. But then online, a lot of the times, especially in like comments, in the comment sections, those comment sections are horrendous, by the way. Um, and even in IES, we have seen some very interesting comments on our social media or our YouTube. Um, and so I think, one of the things that is um, happening is that people feel protected behind the anonymity of an online setting, that they feel like um, either they won't get the consequences of their actions or their words, or that if it happens online, it's not actually real. But then the truth of the matter is that the bullying is real, whether it's online or in person. And like virtual cyberbullying is a big thing. And there were a lot of teens that I worked with, and I know Pastor Josh works with, that experience a lot of this because people didn't like there's a lack of empathy through the screen. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Actually, that's one of the biggest things I wanted to bring up in this conversation, is how can we be courteous? How can we be loving? How can we be Christ-like in our interactions with people when the medium itself kind of lends a little bit of detachment. And sometimes we can feel people can feel more of a license to make snarky comments or barraging comments, or even like body shaming and a lot of different things, or even picking fights online just because it feels safer. It feels like more distant. It feels detached, um, and the empathy is missing there. And so my question for all of you and for me is, how do we get empathy back into our interactions online? How do we get this thing that Paul was talking about, with being authentic and being courteous, be devoted to one another in love in an online setting? Because I think sometimes it feels, again, it feels detached when you're maybe playing an online game and you have an avatar and a handle that nobody really knows who you are and can be related to you. And so you make all of these comments and then don't realize that, oh, that's there's an impact of that to somebody else. A real person is receiving all of these comments. And so how can we be Christ-like in our um, interaction, whether it is under like an an avatar, or if it's as ourselves, if it's on our second, third, fourth um, social media account. I'm thinking about Daniel and his like many social media accounts, or if it's on our like primary one. Um, this is what I think about, especially when we deal with people. How can we bring back empathy and how can we bring back love into it? Um, and also, I think the interesting one is also hospitality, because there's a lot of mutuality in online things, I feel like. But how can we be hospitable online? Um, because for me, hospitality always involves food, and that's actually one thing that I feel like is missing in all of my online groups, either my online soap, online life group, is food. I feel like everyone's like to each their own. If you want food, then yeah. But I feel like in real life, hospitality, it's kind of not easier, but it's um, we tend to think about it a lot less. But I feel like when we host something online or even interact with people online, how can we be hospitable when we can't offer them snacks or a cup of coffee? Um, so I don't know. I'm asking for ideas, because sometimes I'm there interacting with my life group or even hosting online church, or talking to friends online. I don't know what happened there, uh, but or talking to friends online and thinking about, okay, how can we make this like warmer, or like how can I share, because I would always love to invite friends over for board games and things like that to my apartment. But then how do you do that online? Also, I'm not going to invite someone I don't know from online to my apartment. That's not the wisest decision. And so I'm just asking. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. Um, and unity. Um, I think with this, the focus is more on fellow believers, um, being united in purpose and being united in humility. Um, and I think I'm more of like being reflective on how maybe different Christians and different Christians of differing backgrounds portray ourselves, and how we support one another. I think, especially online, there are some um, time when um, we have the opportunity to maybe make fun of a um, different, I don't know, denomination, or a different uh, pastor, or but I think, like, what does unity as believers look like online? Um, so yeah, I have a lot of questions. I don't have a lot of answers. So this podcast episode actually is not for not for you to find out what I think about these, but it's really for me to ask a lot of these questions. How do we build a genuine godly relationships online. And also, even when we are teaching our kids or teenagers, or modeling it, how do we teach um, good, authentic connections online? And so I would love to have a discussion about this with you, and we'll schedule a time to have this discussion with Pastor Dave, because I feel like it's going to be fun, especially talking about virtual churches and things like that. But some things, like one thing to leave you with, I guess, with this podcast episode, um, is our words and our actions matter in person or online. And so, how do we present ourselves as Christ followers in person as well as online? So, what we say, what we do matters. Well, friends, that's about it. I uh, have run out of things to say, or I just need more coffee. Uh, so thank you so much for joining me this time on Take a Beat, and we will see you next week on on another episode of Take a Beat. Don't miss a beat.